Aloha, my name is Jenica Taylor, and thank you for taking the time to join my presentation about the Pride Design Thinking Model. You might be wondering, why is it that we need another design thinking model? We have so many models, different shapes, forms, varieties, scopes, complexities, inclusions, but they all kind of start after, or they all kind of work off of this design thinking model created by the Stanford School of Design. And I think that there's a couple problems here with this model. First of all, it's missing the critical research element. Every design process that I've been through involves research, and this one does not include research. And I think it's really important that it's part, like a very spelled out part of the plan. I also feel like this is trying to incorporate too much. When I go through this plan, it involves creativity, innovation, group work, and then also the launch. And it's not just this. A lot of the design thinking models include those things, which are very related to the design thinking process, but they are not part of the design thinking process. They're kind of outside of that scope. And also, this model is a great, like, it looks great after I've gone through it. I can kind of see where it is that they're coming from. But if I was a new user, I wouldn't be able to look at this and say, yeah, I know how to do design thinking because I've seen this right here. I think it needs to be a little bit more user friendly. So the problem is that current design thinking models don't intuitively and effectively guide users through the design process. I think the design thinking model should be more of a guide. And so I want it to redesign it as more user friendly. I want it to mimic the real life design process a little bit better. I come from a design background, graphic design and learning design, and I feel like I have a good degree of experience here. And also, I think they need to be flexible. They need to work with a wide range of formats in different situations for different purposes, and not get too specific. Um, so let me jump back here. I'm going to walk you through my phase of design thinking. And so this first stage is problem analysis, which is equivalent to the define stage or the second one in the Stanford model. My second phase is research, which is empathy fits inside of that, which is the first phase of the design or the Stanford model. So I just want you to know the Stanford model fits within my framework, but my framework maybe includes it a little bit more. So research, it includes figuring out who your end users are, finding that empathy for them. What is it that they want? How do they feel? Where are they working with this in real life situations? Also, finding comparables. What else has been created that's similar to this? And you can see those on the right-hand side. These are the different design thinking models. What can I learn from those? What value do they bring, and what is it that I don't like? In this phase, even though it doesn't apply to this project, you find out your limitations and resources. What's my budget? What's my schedule? What kind of resources do I have available? And do I have the expertise that I need in order to finish this design project? The next phase is ideate. And I think all of the design thinking models include ideate. This is where we brainstorm and sketch. This is where we think about things in different ways. We experiment with squishing different ideas together, and we have new perspectives. You know, what if I was to look at this through an artistic perspective? What if I was to look at this through a functional perspective? Like, what if I was the technician fixing this product? Or how about the user? If I was the user, how would I look at it? And just trying on all these different perspectives to see how it fits. We need to see if it's think about how to make it viable. Like, how is this actually going to work? And then always jumping back to that problem analysis and saying, is this solving the problems that we have outlined? The next phase is develop, which incorporates the prototype and test phases of the Stanford model. This includes, obviously, prototyping and testing. Subject matter experts, like, what do they think of it? Is it working? What is it what are their thoughts? Also bringing the users in to see what they think, what they feel, and what they have to contribute to the direction that this should go in. We want to make sure that it's functional, that it's flexible, it's not so rigid that it can't, undergo some changes in physical space, in ideology. And again, we want to jump back to that problem analysis and our objectives. Is it user friendly, and is it aligned with the things that we want it to have? The last phase is evaluate. And I think evaluate is a phase that I haven't seen in any of the other design models. This is where I take a step back after testing has been completed and I say, did I meet the objectives that I had set out to accomplish? And then that subjective look, do I think that it's a success? Do I like it? Do I think that we could do better? Is this something that I can stand behind? And again, is it functional? Is it flexible? Is it viable? Is it feasible? Is it desirable? And then after I've gone through this whole analysis, like, okay, am I ready to launch it? Or do I send it back to problem analysis for a redesign and start that process over again? So after I created that initial sketch that was on the ideate page, I came up with a couple of things that I wanted to have happen. The first one is that I wanted it to be memorable. So I needed an acronym. I needed a word that they could remember, that the users could remember to walk them through that process. And so I came up with a bunch of different words that could kind of work, but pride was the one that I landed on. Another one of the options was write, WRITE, where the first phase was what do I want to see happen, and then research, imagine, test, and then evaluate. I think it would have worked, but pride I think works a little bit better. I had to develop what were the definitions for each of these phases, like what did they embody, and then what order did I want them to be in, to describe each of those phases, and then what's the criteria, like what are the questions that we need to ask in each of these phases. So after this first round, I tested it with a friend who was an industrial designer, and we were able to come up with some great changes. The first one was to change the imagine phase to ideate. The reason that we would do that is because ideate is the term that is used in the industry. We want to align it with industry. Even though I like the word imagine better, I think it's more fun. Ideate was the right way to go. Refine the criteria a little bit, including sketching in the ideate phase, because that's such an important part, like taking your ideas and making them tangible, making them physical. The last thing is that when I printed this up, I had the purple P and I had the blue E, and then all in the middle, it was all the same color when it came out of the printer, because printers have a hard time sometimes printing in blue. So I wanted to change those colors. And that brought us to version 2. So you can see here the colors are much more differentiated. You've got the P that's indigo, then we got purple, pink, red, and orange. So that was great. As far as the criteria, I chunked it out a little bit and I put it into different steps. And so each phase has different steps. That top row right there that you see, that's the step of action. Like, what do we have to do as part of this phase? Are we going to brainstorm and mind map and then create concept sketches? So that's what we're doing. The second step, or the middle, is examine. What do we need to keep in mind as we're acting on this, as we're putting this together? What do we need to consider? What do we need to balance things with? And then that last phase, or that last step on the bottom, that's delivery, because we're going to do a bunch of stuff, and then at the end of each phase, you're going to have to put something together to bring to the next phase. And so that's kind of the idea of a lot of the design thinking models have this idea of converging and then diverging. Divert and then diverge and then converge. Sorry, that was what it was. So you're going to think big. You're not going to have any limitations. You're just going to go with it. But then you're going to figure out, what do I have here that's of value? And I'm going to take this and wrap it up, and then I'm going to take it to the next phase. And then again, working on that criteria. What are the important questions that are going to be asked in each phase that are also flexible enough to apply to a lot of different situations? When I presented this to an organizational, a business organization specialist, the feedback that I got was that it's a little bit overwhelming. There's just too much information. If I was just to give this to somebody, they wouldn't know what to do with it. And I agreed. And I think it was good feedback. So I took it to this next phase where I simplified things and minimized the text. I refined the criteria even more. And apparently I didn't do it enough, because when I brought this to our strategic planning meeting in our department to hand out, there was a lot of misunderstandings about how to use it. One of the first comments was, we don't really have a problem here. We can't start with problem analysis because there's nothing wrong. We're just, putting a new plan together, which is actually what problem analysis is. It doesn't mean that there's like something negative going on. It just means like we have something that we need to address. But that wasn't clear to somebody who wasn't familiar with design thinking, and just didn't know how to use the model to begin with. And so I should have listened better in version 2. But that brought me to version 4. So version 4, I thought we need a lead in, we need a soft landing, we need an introduction. So I added this overview visual that kind of walks you through the plan and the model and how to use it. And I also developed a workbook that I'm going to go over in a little bit. These are just some of the pages from the workbook. But first, I want to go over the PRIDE design thinking model. All right, phase 1. We have problem analysis. What is it that we're trying to accomplish here? What are the root causes? What is it that's involved? And what are the goals that we have? What is it that we're going to evaluate when we get to that evaluate stage? The second phase is research. Research the end users, research the technology and innovation going on in the world, comparables. We want to research all of the information that is going to be relevant to our solution. That includes limitations and resources, key stakeholders, systems analysis, like all of those things. The next phase is ideate the possibilities. This is where we brainstorm and sketch and like use those different perspectives, and we think, how can we solve this out of the box? Like if this was just crazy, if anything was possible, how would we put it together? And then we take all those ideas and then we consolidate them into workable plans. From those plans, we move into the development stage where we prototype and test and see how it is that these are coming together. Products, plans, layouts, whatever. And then lastly, we have the evaluation stage where we visit the problem analysis again and we say, all right, this is where we started. This is where we're ending. Like, did we get to where it is that we wanted to be? The last portion I want to point out is this iterative process in the middle, which is iterative just means we're going to go back and forth. We're going to bounce around a little bit. These are the stages that are bookended by the problem and the evaluation. This is where all of the change and the development happens. So just as an example, I often like to figure out what the problem is, and then I will go to I'll jump right into the ideation phase. Sometimes I feel like if I research too much, it taints my open-mindedness and my thinking, because I see too much how it is that people have done this already. And so I will jump to ideate, and then I can go back to research, in development, and then go back to research. So we just bounce around in here. That's what the iterative process is. All right, so the workbook. This is the cover page for the workbook. And then we open up, and that introduction, that first page is talking about what the design thinking model is, why we need it, and how do I use it. Then we have the overview that includes like what is design thinking and what's the process, and then we have this visual, of course. Then I cover each of the pages. So the first one is problem analysis. It has a description of what this phase is supposed to be about and maybe some key points. Then we have questions that we're going to ask. And because every design project is different, it needs to be flexible. They need to be the right questions. And so I have this other page on the right that has space so that, I mean, it's just saying your project's going to have specific things that apply to it. So this is where you can take notes to kind of customize it to your own needs, or take notes for the process that you're going through. It welcomes or the users to be a part of the process and to help it to fit their own personal needs. You can see all of these pages are very similar with the questions and the space on the right. And then afterwards, I have this chart that I came up with that I still really like, but I think this chart fits much better after I've walked through the process. And then I can look at this chart, I can stick it up on my wall and I can say, oh, this reminds me how to do the design process because I remember now what that was all about. So very helpful after we've walked through the process, but we did need that introduction. We can't just jump right into it if you don't know anything about it, about design thinking or the model itself. Oh, and this is the back cover. So let's jump back to our objectives. First of all, I wanted the design to be user-friendly. I think I accomplished that in the workbook, in creating an acronym and creating, like, outlining that iterative process. I do think that it describes it a little bit more. I feel like this plan also, or this model also mimics the real world design practices a little bit better with the verbiage and also the process, including research in there is huge, and also some of the questions that are being asked. I also feel like it's very flexible. It can apply to a wide range of formats, systems, processes, big groups, small groups, and also maybe I'll throw in here that I think design thinking is a very natural process for us. I think we all do it. We come up with new ways to make things better. We say, oh, you know what would be a great invention? And we come up with that. The pride design thinking model comes into play when you have bigger groups that are working on things on like collaborative design. And so you have to have something a little bit more formal, a little bit more laid out. And even if you're working by yourself, it kind of lays it out step by step so that you understand the design thinking process and all of those things that we can kind of naturally do on a more cognitive level. So I will say this project is a great start and it is not complete. I need to go through the criteria phase even more, like what are the exact questions that I need to ask that covers all of the design thinking, and then also keeps it flexible enough so that everybody can use it. And then also more prototype testing. Like I have to put these workbooks together, use them in different settings, in different places, with different projects and different people. I feel like it has a lot of potential. And again, I feel like it's a great start. And I'm probably going to continue this because I think it's pretty interesting. I'm going to end off with a quote. Design isn't just about making things beautiful. It's also about making things work beautifully. And that quote is by Roger Martin from Why Design Thinking is the Next Competitive Advantage. And I wholeheartedly agree. Coming from an art background, I like to make things look good. But if they don't work, then it just is not worth how beautiful it is. Like it needs to work. It needs to be functional, and it also has to have the form. So big mahalo nui loa to you for your time and participation. Thank you for watching this presentation, and good luck with your design thinking in the future.